Hi, everybody. Welcome to Lunch and Learn, the Encore edition. We had technical difficulties at our regular stream time at noon today. We did go ahead and stream, but there was a lot of disruption. And so we decided to replay it here. And we'll put it up on YouTube, on our Facebook page and our LinkedIn page. So you can get it there for a replay if you need to go back and make reference. Today, we're focusing on the essential steps to prepare for the 3 types of job interviews. So let's get moving and go into what we're going to cover. First of all, we're going to talk about a brief kind of state of interviewing and update on the job market. Secondly, we're going to talk about the 3 types of interviews and provide you with some strategies and tactics, some specific and some cover all 3 categories. And in the end, talk about the interview goals. What were you trying to accomplish at each interview state? And we'll give you some recommendations on what you have to do there. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. If you're new to watching this stream, it is a group called Your Career Community. It's a private group. It's going to be at the end of February. This stream will be members only. But before we talk about that, let me tell you a little something about myself. I've been a career coach since mid 2017. Prior to that, I spent 27 years in executive recruiting, working both across 37 states in the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii, and worked in 6 countries on 4 different continents doing retained health care search. So I've had 27 years of experience. I started out my career as a crime writer, investigative journalist, and finished my work in 1973 at the Houston Post. And I'd seen all the dead bodies I ever wanted to see, and we won't go into that. But let me just say this: I was working on the mean streets of Houston, and moved over to public relations at Herman Hospital, which is the hospital where I was born. Sort of a great amount of symmetry, and I've had a lot of that in my life. And I was there working on PR projects, and then they decided they were going to do an air ambulance program, helicopter ambulance program. So I was the lead implementer for that second program in the country, and then became the national marketing manager for the aircraft leasing company. I was one of the first recruiters when I started in 1994 to be routinely using video to record my interviews with senior executives. So when I presented them to the client, they could see their resume and hear them answer questions of relevancy. I've also was one of the first to use the behavior and values interview program developed by Brad Smart called Top Grading, and it was extremely, extremely successful. It shocked a lot of candidates because it was very involved and took 2 or 3 hours, and then nobody had ever been interviewed by a recruiter for that long before. And we usually took about 20 to 30 minutes and recorded some questions about their style and how they would address certain problems. And the clients loved it. I mean, they absolutely loved it. One client in Cincinnati said, "I can't believe more people aren't doing this." And in fact, there was a smaller recruiter in Cincinnati that probably started doing it before I even considered it. And so we did that, and we were one of the few search firms in the United States to do that. And it literally made a difference. Clients they were not making decisions on who to bring on board or bring in for interviews just based on paper. They could see the person and decide whether there was a sense of connection. I've interviewed more than 9,000. Gosh, when I say that, it's just hard to believe. 9,000 executives and managers over my executive search career. When I was an investigative journalist, I interviewed a lot of people there. Most of them probably didn't want to talk to me. So let's focus now on what's happening in the job market. We are still dealing with the white collar recession. A lot of people are under the opinion that with President Trump back in office, that the economy is going to really improve really quickly, and everything's going to be okay, and that jobs are going to start flowing again. I wish that were true. There's no evidence that the white collar recession is going to break anytime soon in the executive management ranks. If there are substantial tariffs across the board, that may signal a softening in the job market. Even if we started hiring at a pretty good clip today, it would probably take over a year to absorb all of the out of work executives and managers. It's stunning how many people are looking for jobs. So that's where we are in the job market. The second thing I want to tell you is that if you're new to the job market and you're struggling, I want to tell you, you can't do it the way you used to do it. What got you here will not get you to the future. And so you have to understand that even when there are certain things that sound familiar, look familiar, they are very different. For example, telephone screening, today they're still doing it, but we may see that go almost all to video in the near future. But you have to be very focused. And now more than ever, you have to be focused on your value, not your experience. The second thing is the in-depth interview. For years, we would bring people, they would meet with recruiters for the client, and then we would refer them on to the client if we liked their style, like their substance, like their performance, their performance history, because we always believed that the best predictor of the future was how they performed in their previous jobs. This is an interview where you really have to be prepared. You really have to have a good sense of what your successes were and have interesting stories to relay that success to the employer. You can't just go in and answer questions and give them facts and figures, because they won't remember that. And understand this, because there are so many people looking for jobs, employers can be extremely, extremely picky, and they are. So you have to go in and give them a compelling story for why they should hire you. You have to give them a compelling reason why they can believe that your value is worth more than somebody else. And finally, the face-to-face interviews. So while structurally that's still similar, it's all about value. They want to know what you can do for them. They don't want you to come in and answer questions and just tell everybody where you worked and what you did and how many people you were responsible for. That's all great, but you've got to have quantifiable achievements. A lot of people don't keep logs and they forget, and that's going to hurt you going forward. Most recruiters don't go past 15 years, but you have to be able to talk about some specific accomplishments back 15 years. So if you're not keeping a career journal, we've talked about this, we've written about this, so you can go to my website, johngself.com, go to the blog page. We're not posting there right now. We use Substack, but you can still use the search engine there and bring back up other articles we've written. So the face-to-face interview now is really focusing on behavior and values questions, and they want to focus on what you delivered. And so you have to be prepared to give them quantifiable proof. It's extremely competitive. I have talked to a lot of recruiters and a lot of my colleagues, and they tell me stories about how they posted a job on their company website, and within 2 days, they had 250, 300 people, a lot of whom were qualified for the job. So that's why it's so important for you to be ready for the job interview. That's why it's so important for you to understand your value proposition and understand how to deliver your value brand statement in a compelling way, because you have a lot of competition, and the employers can be picky. Okay, there's really when we talk about preparing for the interviews, let me just say this. A lot of recruiters, when I was doing that work from the 90s until 2017, 2018, complained about how poorly prepared candidates were when they came into the interview, and that they always didn't know a lot about the employer. Sometimes they didn't even take the time to read the job summary. And recruiters don't like that. I mean, recruiters expect you to come in and be prepared. Recruiters expect you to come in and be able to talk about your value in a way that they want to look good to the client. So if they deliver 5 or 6 kind of, you know, wussy, candidates who aren't really prepared, they're going to look bad. So if you go in and just kind of lollygag, you're going to find out that you're going to be passed over more profoundly than you have in the past. So the first thing you have to do in the interview prep is you have to understand the job and the challenges. And sometimes you can glean that from the job summary, and other times you're going to have to make phone calls and do some deep dives. The second thing you have to do is have a strategy to execute. In each interview format, you have to decide, these are the issues that I think they want to talk about. These are things I want to share to evidence my knowledge and evidence my success in these areas. You have to connect your value to their needs. It doesn't. You can have great experience, and if you weren't experienced, if you didn't have the proper credentials, you wouldn't be at the table. But if you think doing a good job in your last job was enough to get you this next job, you're out of step with what's going on in the job market. When you have 10 or 15 or 20 great candidates for one job, it's extremely noisy. So you have to be really unique in defining who you are and why that client needs to hire you. In other words, you need to be able to make certain performance commitments. Okay, to succeed in your job search, you have to understand first, this is a new day and there are a lot of new rules. And so it probably first and foremost, and I grew up listening to this, and so I feel fairly comfortable saying it. Interviewing is a zero-sum game. If you didn't get the job, it wasn't because they went with the other guy. It's no, you lost. You didn't do as good a job as you should have done to get the job. You've got to hold yourself accountable. Don't roll it off and say, "Oh, they hired somebody else. They probably knew them." It makes you feel better, but it doesn't make you get better. Okay, you may feel okay about it, but that does nothing to prepare you for the next time around. And if you don't change, you're still going to keep interviewing after most other people have found a job. So you want to recognize that it's a zero-sum game dynamic. People are going to win and people are going to lose. In every job, there's a winner and a bunch of losers. So don't let the losing side be you. And you avoid that by doing deeper dives into the organization, doing online research, looking at 990 forms, talking to vendors that you may know or have connections with that work in that organization or who sell to that organization. And as you put together a picture of the organization, you want to draw heavily on their job summary, which may not be very. You may not draw out too much heavy from it, because a lot of the job summaries are really look like they were written by a lazy person. But if whatever you can glean from that job summary, you have to put that into your equation. You have to begin using that to build some kind of structure on which you can base your argument to be hired. So you want to curate your strengths and provide examples of success. Now, I think the thing that a lot of people don't do is the night before the interview, they'll kind of review their resume and they'll think about some of the things they've done in the past, and they'll read the job summary again, and they'll look at some online stuff, and that's it. You have to do much better than that now. You have to meticulously prepare, and you have to rehearse 10x. Okay, because the people who are getting picked are the ones that come in and make a compelling argument to the employer why they should be hired. And you can't say, "Well, I don't like to brag. I do a good job, and they should see that." No, they won't. They're gonna listen to the person who did good work, but who sold themselves. That's what this is all about. And so if you're gonna be in the game, you gotta make that adjustment. Just because you've done a good job in the past is no guarantee you'll do good work that you'll get hired in the future. Now, one of the reasons we tell you to be very, very detailed in your preparations using Google, there's a lot of sources. 990 forms, I think I mentioned, in industry contacts, people who may call on those organizations in terms of selling or marketing, people that may provide support to the organization. Excuse me. And so you have to develop this deep kind of a pile of information, and then you have to sort it out and to see what it supports. But when you start thinking about what they're looking for, what you're good at, and pulling all this together, this is going to help you develop confidence. Okay, when you're really well prepared, it's like going into a final on the last day of school, and you pick up the exam and start reading it through, and you're on page 4, and you've got everyone, the answers to everyone you've read. So you've got this. Well, that's what happens for interview prep. When you've done the prep correctly, you will have confidence, you'll be focused, and you'll have less anxiety. You'll also be self-aware so that you are very, very aware of the questions, how they're reacting, and stories that you can tell to capture their imagination. And finally, in executing the interview, you have to connect the dots with the employer's sense of need and purpose. Now, let's focus on the telephone interview. It's also called a screening interview. It's the first one that's held, and they're still being done largely by telephone, but I don't expect that to continue for long term. So let's talk about the two primary objectives. Number one, you got to learn more about the job. You got to ask. Sometimes I've heard screening interviewers say, "Before we get started, do you have any questions?" Open the door, walk through, try to find out about, comp if they haven't discussed that. Try to find out about the time frame for the search. Find out if there are any internal candidates, and talk about what their needs are and what happened to the last person that worked there. And I think to effectively answer questions, while you're trying to answer their questions and while you're trying to get information for the next interview, you really need to focus on building trust and likability with the interviewer, because that'll ensure that you get her attention and that she's probably going to be more favorable to your candidacy. So that's really important. Learn about the job, do a deep dive, understand what you're going to need to do to be successful, and effectively ask questions and answer their questions, and really focus on likability and with the interviewer. Trust and likability are so important. Well, I know most of us have felt like this guy. A lot of options. Can go this road or that road. We can go straight ahead. There's something off in the distance that's caught my eye. Well, I think that you've got to focus. You can't be like this guy that's got multiple choices. You may have multiple choices, but until you focus on what you want to do with your life, it's going to be tough. And so what I would tell you is get focused, use the the prep information we've already given you, and use that to be focused. Your value brand statement that we help people develop absolutely can be beneficial to helping you develop focus and avoid those things that you don't really need to get involved with. So, in order to do that, you got to preview the job summary and break it down by categories. The key takeaways here are you want to provide answers that will confirm your understanding. In other words, if they ask you a question, you want to provide an answer, and then you want to say, and by the way, I understand this, this, and this. Is that accurate? We're not living in necessarily a truth age. But if you're clever, you can get them to tell you things about the organization, which will help you decide, number one, how to enter in the future, how to move forward, and number two, whether you even want the job. So you also have to understand the core issues. Your value brand statement and your 4 or 5 signature strengths are called your core, and you want to help use that to stay focused on key issues. And so, the core issues are going to be your signature strengths. And when they ask you, why should we hire you? Or tell me a little bit about yourself. Those are essentially the same question. And you want to give a really 90-second to 1 minute, 1.5 minutes at the most, a summary of who you are and what you want, not where you've worked, not go through that litany, because they probably, hopefully, read your own resume. And so they kind of know where you've been. Now they want to hear why they should hire you. I heard one candidate say, first of all, let me say, I'm here because I'm really interested in this job. I didn't know if I would be at the outset, but after we had our initial screening call, I am extremely interested. Okay. That's a great thing to say. It's not blowing too much smoke up somebody's skirt, but it also lets them know you are seriously interested. Okay. They're always going to ask about your leadership style and several other questions. And you can go to various books or, schedule a free call with me and I'll give you some hints on the kind of questions that you might get in an initial screening interview. But you want to avoid talking head jargon. Oh, that's like all these guys that show up on CNBC in the mornings and use all of the Wall Street terminology year over year. Gosh, what are some of the other terms? But anyway, they're a dime a dozen. Those guys sit there around the table and throw the cliches out. You want to avoid that talking head jargon. You want to be authentic and focused with your answers, and that's really, really important. You have to be authentic and you have to, be focused with your answers, especially on that initial call. You may only have 30 to 40 minutes. You can't try to impress them with your encyclopedic knowledge. Okay. Now, again, preparation. Why are you doing all this work? You may get eliminated at any moment. Yes, you might. But I guarantee it's a certainty if you don't do this work, you will be eliminated. So I just think that that's just something you just have to lock in on. Preparation fuels self-awareness, which enhances your performance. Don't be a talking head and be really tuned in to your self-awareness issue so that you can really take advantage of that power. Okay, let's talk about little Miss Gussie here, getting ready for a telephone interview. And how do you prep for that? Well, first of all, it's a really tough interview because you can't see the person. You don't know how they're reacting. First thing when you get the call, you want to ask who's going to do the interview. When will it be held? And then they have to work with you. Excuse me. Excuse me. Gosh, I took a sinus tablet earlier before lunch, and it's just now catching up with me. So you have to be prepared because they're going to probably have 40 minutes on the clock, and they're going to try to ask you as many questions as possible. And you need to, work your way into some of those questions with some of your own, because if you don't, you're setting yourself up for failure at the next round. Okay, who's going to conduct the interview? That's something you always want to know when they try to set the appointment. This next question you're going to have is, tell me the budgeted length of the call. How long do they anticipate budgeting time for it? Well, a lot of people right now are thinking about, the 30 to 40 minutes. Okay. Let me tell you something. Some people brag and say, gosh, I was so good. They talked to me for an hour and a half. That doesn't mean anything. Trust me, it doesn't mean a damn thing. They're going to say if your schedule stays set at 30 to 40 minutes, if that's what they said, and you're staying inside 40 minutes, that's good for you as long as you gave them good focused answers. But if you just been doing a data dump and trying to, score some points, you're really wasting your time in today's market. Okay. One of the things you must ask is, are there any issues for which I need to prepare? Okay. You do not want to get blindsided. What are the key waypoints for the search process? You need to know at this point, we hope to present to the client. At this point, we hope to begin doing references. At this point, that sort of thing. And when you say that, just say, well, if I'm lucky enough to be considered, I just want to know these waypoints so that I can keep my grandfather, uncle, whoever that's going to help me in the reference, or as a former employee that can help me get the job. So I think that you want to know that time frame. And while you're doing it, while you're engaging in conversation, you're always listening for what may be wrong with this deal. Why is this position open, or what's the turnover rate like, etc. Now, telephone screening is really interviewing the high notes at 30,000 feet. What the employees are listening for, they're listening for short, focused answers. They want to test the depth of your experience relevant to those issues. And they want to know your style about handling conflict, your ability to adapt. They want to know desperately how you will fit in the company, and you just have to wait for the right opportunities to reassure them. Okay, the tips for the telephone interview. Do not be afraid to ask critical, relevant questions. This is your intel prep too. You have just as many rights to ask questions as they do, but you want to be deferential. You do want to be sure that she or he gets all their questions asked. Now, preparing for this, you want to print a picture of the person from their LinkedIn profile. During the interview, do not talk to the phone, talk to the picture. Okay, that'll help you have some sense of subconscious connection, and it'll that most people pick that up. If you don't need the schedule, if you don't know the schedule length of the interview, ask how much time. If they haven't told you, ask how much time is allotted. Be time sensitive. Don't try to keep the interview going thinking that's going to give you an unfair advantage. It won't. If you're getting interview advice from somebody who's not been competitively interviewed in the last 5 years, be really cautious. I've seen people do some of the most incredibly stupid things because they were told by somebody, "Oh, no, they want to see all this stuff. You don't have to worry about those facts and figures. They want to see where you've been because that's really important to them." Well, where you've been's important. Yes, I'm not going to argue that point, but really, what they're interested in, what was your level of expertise and success in your previous jobs? That's what they're going to use to base, whether they're going to bring you up to the next level. Okay. But be careful taking advice from people who've not been in the job market in a long time. The reason I do coaching is because I enjoyed recruiting a lot. And I also I'm in the market. I mean, I am listening every day to what people have to say. When you're dressing for a telephone interview versus a video interview or a face-to-face interview, you want to dress comfortably, okay? But you want to be professional. And I think you need to wear something that's you feel comfortable wearing, okay? Don't always recommend wearing the new shirt and all that other stuff that you might have bought. I just don't recommend that because sometimes those things can be itchy and all that other stuff. Wear something that you have worn before that makes you feel good. You sound good. You look comfortable in that and cool in that and self-assured in that outfit. So that's what you need to consider. Okay, if don't wear holey shirts and PE shorts and sit in your Barker chair laid back while you're doing the interview because that's all going to come out. I mean, we can just hear it in people's voices. And I think I probably asked 15 or 20 people in my career, and I was probably right 18 out of 20 people who were, not really dressed appropriately. They wouldn't wear to the interview what they have on at home. And I will tell you that that's not a good idea to pursue when you're doing telephone interviews because it does come through. We want you to be confident, self-aware, and we want your performance. I think if you are confident and self-aware, this is going to help you level up your appearance. Okay. So that's something that I think you need to consider. Is that Intel? The other thing I meant, sorry to mention this. If you have a mirror nearby, hopefully try to get in a position where you can see yourself in the mirror. Are you smiling? That's a real key point. Be confident, be self-aware. The performance will help you tease out additional additional market intel. Now, the in-depth interview, there's really three primary objectives here. And this, listen carefully, this is not preparation you do the night before the big interview. It is a week of intensive prep. Okay. You want to learn more about the organization and its challenges, though carefully through carefully thought out questions. You want to focus on your value brand statement, your strengths, your intel from the first screening interview, and your research to anticipate the potential questions. People say, "Well, how do you do that?" There's a method. I'll show you how to do that. You want to pair those with your strengths and examples of success. So I think this is just some pretty common sense stuff. Now, video interview versus the in-person interview. Video interviews, you have to be very careful with logistics. Okay, a lot of times these video online systems, whether it's whoever, they won't always rush over with they. Let me start over and do it a different way. They're in a when you're doing a video interview, you want to dress for the part. Okay. And you have to check your equipment out, because if they've updated it and it's 5 minutes to the interview, the update might not be finished when you're starting to do it. So check everything the night before. We had checked everything on our noon stream today, and everything was fine. And then when we loaded everything up, a couple of settings changed, probably because we hit something we didn't mean to, and we couldn't advance the slides. Okay. Then we started to scroll across the bottom of the screen. We couldn't figure out how to stop. Now, on video interviews, you want to have good lighting, a quiet place to do it, a decent background. Be very wary or very uptight on what's in your background, because that could really cause some embarrassment. So I think the dress code, it's important. If you're not going to dress, if you're going to wear shorts below your suit jacket, and white shirt or whatever that is, understand, if you're going to stand up, turn off the camera. If you're going to go take a break for a bathroom call, or you're going to take, a break for, what a water break, don't stand up with your shorts on and a coat and tie, because you're going to look bad. I don't care. I just don't care what else you do. Don't do that. Okay. The other thing is, sometimes during the summer months, and we're coming up on that, you may be on vacation when you're asked to interview, and you may be on vacation, maybe one of the barrier islands in the Atlantic, or some other place in this around Florida, or over in the Texas Gulf Coast, and you can't get a good signal for your cell phone. And that's what most people are using now. Okay. First of all, if you have a Wi-Fi in the house, and you don't have good cell phone outside, then you can use the cell phone program on your telephone, and it'll route the call to the best strongest signal. However, the best thing to do is test it. Be sure that it's working. Be sure that the updates that the company installed are working. And also, you really want to if the weather's going to be bad, you absolutely want to be sure that you make allowances. Have some contingency plans already in place in case the worst possible thing happens. Okay, it's just a smart thing to do. Now, when you're preparing for any of the interviews, but especially the in-depth interview and the final interview, here's what you do. On the left side here, we have the categories of a job. If you take a job summary, it's pretty easy to kind of think about all the elements of the job. There's finance, there's operations, there's human resources, there's governance, which is reporting, relationships, and there's marketing. Okay. And just about, even if you're a service organization like PR or pharmacy in a hospital or something like that, you still are interacting with other people. They look for you to get them the supplies they need. So you're essentially providing them supplies in a market environment. And you want to think about the marketing piece and how that relates to other people in the organization. Okay, so you got the categories. There may be more in some jobs, but that's kind of the core group. Then the value brand statement, and boy, is this ever important. Write your statement. You can download some information on the website at johngself.com, or if you want to schedule a free phone call with me at johngself.com, at the bottom of the home page, just punch talk to John. There you go. The VBS is important. Candidates that have a value brand statement, or as my former colleague Nancy Swain, who's absolutely brilliant as an outplacement coach, Nancy Swain came up with something called the value proposition, and makes all the sense in the world. Well, I did not want to pilfer off Nancy her thought product. So the idea is fairly common. I've heard other people talking about it. So what we did is change the name to value brand statement, and we changed the approach to a great deal of how we help people put that together. And basically, when somebody says, "Tell me about yourself," they don't want to hear about your resume. They want to hear your value brand statement. Okay. And I can give you some examples of what that statement sounds like. Okay. That's very important. But when you're VBS, you want to talk about your strengths for each category. Okay. You want to talk about successes with examples for each category. You may have two successes and two examples in each of your categories that we're going to be dealing with. When you get questioned about weaknesses, that's going to come. A lot of people hate it, don't like it. Some people have refused to answer it to their peril. But when they say, what's the biggest mistake you've made? Just say, well, since you've asked, I did this, this, and this, and I thought, as soon as I did it, I knew it was a huge total mistake. And I've had good mentors over the years, and they have taught me how to rebound. That it's not my ego, that's not important. It's how do we solve the problem and get back on track. Something like that is a potential answer. If they ask you about your weaknesses, acknowledge them. Quickly pivot, and talk about other key points of how you overcame that and what it's like now and what people say about you now. And you say, "God, I don't feel comfortable asking that kind of information. I don't want to be glib. I don't want to put you in a bad spot emotionally, but you need to do that. I'm sorry." But if you want to really be prepared, there's really no way around it. Let me tell you something. I've taught this concept for years. So there are other people out there doing it. So if you hope to win, if you hope to be the winner and not the zero-sum game loser, you want to put together your core and categorical form. So you want to select stories that touch on each of the categories. You want to select stories that talk about your successes in each category. Then you want to take that information and think about, okay, all the research I did and all the people I've talked to, does this meet the client's standard? And when I say standard, is it something that's relevant for the client? You want to connect the candidate with your VBS to the client. That's so important. And you want to connect them to the VBS. That you want the client to understand it's important. You want to connect the candidate to understand it. And then you have to rehearse, and you have to rehearse, and you have to rehearse, and you have to rehearse. And that's kind of a tough row to hoe, but because most people don't like doing that because they've been told don't brag about yourself. Well, somebody who's made hundreds of presentations across the country, dozens upon dozens of presentations for new business, I kind of get an understanding about that. But I would say that, well, it's just part of the bit. It's just part of it. You just got to go with it. So test the client, test your examples for relevance to the client, and then rehearse. Okay. We kind of beat that one to death. And I guarantee if you rehearse, your performance will improve, significantly. Okay, the face-to-face interview, again, 3 primary objectives. This is not a night before interview prep project. You start this weeks, if not a week before. You want to have review questions from the previous interviews that you've recorded, written down on paper. What did they ask you about this, that, and the other? Did they highlight one issue more than another? So that's important for you to consider. And then you want to prepare a strong case for a close. Okay. And people say, close? What is that all about? Well, it's best described as, well, I want the job. Here's why I'm good at it. And you always want to let the people know that you're interested. Don't assume that they're going to figure it out. Prepare for a strong close. I can do this job. I have you have problems in this area of your organization. I have solved those before. I have dealt with that kind of horrific, black and white kind of issue. You want to talk about how you can assure them that you can get the job done. Now, let me tell you something. In 27 years, I never had a client, I never had a candidate say, John, you can tell that your client, I guarantee you I can get this done. Most people would say, oh, no, no, we can't do that. They might hold us accountable, as if that wasn't what we were doing to begin with. Again, be prepared, be focused. Don't let the fact that you have multiple options dissuade you. Concentrate on your prep, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your great examples. Zero in on that information. Then for the logistics part, the planning part, if you're going to fly to see a candidate, you want to plan your trip carefully, and you want to know, if this goes wrong, what's my fallback position going to be? Okay. You want to avoid any interruptions or disruptions in your travel, because that can only create anxiety. My God, I'm not going to make it. What's going to happen? And then your mind runs away with the probabilities, and you're trying to trying to survive on what's likely, what's not just what could happen, but what's likely to happen. So you want to plan, because if something does happen, you want to say, okay, now I'm going to do this. I have all the telephone numbers of people I need to reach to let them know. I was supposed to start a search with a client in McConnellsburg, Pennsylvania. Great town with some remarkably great people. I love that community. I love doing that search. I stayed with one of the board members in his B&B, and it was this incredible cabin. Absolutely, I just had the most wonderful time. They were the most welcoming people, but I wanted to make a good first impression. And so as I was traveling to Dulles Airport, I had to make a stop, because, excuse me, as I was traveling to, where was I flying to? I think I was going up to Dulles. I landed in Atlanta. Just as I landed, we taxied to the gate. Atlanta had the airport had that massive power failure, and I was one of 200,000 people, or 50,000, or whatever it was, a lot of people stuck in the basement where all the trains were, and get to, because I was between gates. And so in order to get to the gate, I had to go walk down the escalators, because the escalators weren't working. Then I got to the other side, and I had to walk up the real steep one going up into the lobby. And it was unbelievable. I was carrying bags, because this was right at Christmas. And after I finished this meeting, I was going to take the train to New York and spend 2 days with my wife, because I hadn't seen her very much, because I'd been traveling so much. And so it was a carefully planned trip, and the power went out. And I did not get to McConnellsburg until 6 o'clock next night. And I was really upset, and they were very understanding, but I was just really tense and really anxious. I was trying to get there, because I drove down from Harrisburg, which is about an hour and a half drive down through all the tunnels, through the mountains. And it's, but I had a lot of anxiety. And I kept thinking, cool it, better than this. But if you have your trip planned, and if you don't cut corners, you can't plan for a power failure in the airport. Doesn't happen that often. But if you have a cancellation or fog or whatever, and they take you to a different airport, think about what your options are going to be. And don't say, well, I'm not interviewing until 2 o'clock, so I'll just fly in that morning. You are asking for the airline gods to screw you over. Go the night before, so you have plenty of time, and you don't have a lot of anxiety and trying to avoid being late. You want to see yourself. You really want to see yourself confidently answering these questions, and you want to be comfortable and self-aware, so that you can get the employer to see what you are saying. And that's really important. It's called visual leadership. You want to talk in a term, you want to be rested, you want to be self-aware, you want to be well prepared, and you want them to see what you are saying, so that they will see that you are the person for the job. You are the solution, and that's really important for you not to lose sight of. But if you don't plan ahead, if you start getting emotionally anxious about things, the wheels are going to come off faster than you expect. Now, a lot of people, there have been a number of candidates who've made the mistake of not realizing that as soon as you hit the parking lot of the hospital or the plant or the corporation, as soon as you hit that lot, the interview started. How did you treat the parking attendant? How did you treat the security guard? How did you treat the young woman or young man at the reception desk? I'm here for an interview. No, that sounds like you're Mr. Important. You're not. You're just a candidate. You're there to help them solve a problem. Be modest. Don't let your ego get carried away that I'm a real hot stud and because I've been recruited to come here and save the day. That's only going to get you in trouble. And then when you do meet the person that you're going to be visiting with and interviewing with, or who's your lead contact for the day, maybe it's probably the hiring manager, you want to be sure that you greet her with a big smile and whatever is culturally appropriate for her background, his background, whatever. I made the mistake during my first visit to the UAE of trying to shake a woman's hand. She recoiled as if I had the plague, and I knew immediately what I did. And I said, I am so sorry. I know better, and please forgive me. I beg your pardon. And she smiled and kind of laughed because it's probably happened to her before. But you want to be culturally sensitive. And, people say, oh, don't worry about being woke. Listen, in a job interview, be safe. Don't let some political mumbo jumbo, turn you inside out because you're afraid to be kind and considerate and shake hands and let people know, hey, I'm a good guy or a good woman. I can do this job. You can trust me. That's what all of this is just kind of the icing on the cake, but it's so important that you do these things so people will understand who you are. Now, in everything you do, there's a checklist, okay? And you need to think about answering questions that'll help sell your value. And so when you do that and you're looking at all your research, you need to test your findings through questions. You're going to get some information in the first screening interview. Then you want to do some more research. And when you do that, then you're going to be able to say, okay, I need to know about this, this, and this. And is this situation, I think I understand this. So when you're asked in a second interview, do you have any questions? Yes. Oh, I do. I'm so sorry. I do. I've been reading about this. Can you help explain what that's about? I think I understand it, but I don't want to take anything for granted. Okay. That shows you're being careful with the facts. You're not taking anything for granted. That's important. And so they're going to help you in a follow-up interview vet some of your own research. Now, if you use your LinkedIn platform as a research tool, you probably can find people who've done business with that organization, or maybe are a competitor with that organization, or somebody in the organization that you may be connected to and didn't realize it. Always check that. Always check for where your existing contacts are in a region, because that could really help you if you're dealing with somebody who's already in the organization and you have a conversation and they go, oh yeah, this guy's really great. We talked about, he called me and asked me about these things. So, that you have to be careful how you do it, but that can be a great tool. Some people say, oh, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'll just go answer questions. Okay. Now you're putting yourself at the back of the line. You're going to have to get out of your safe zone. And there's nothing I can do there's nothing I can do to make you feel better. And there's nothing I can do or say that's going to change what you have to do to be successful. So be prepared to get out of your safe zone. I think once you've verified what the information is that you have, that you've got a good kind of foundation of research, you kind of know what's going on in the organization, you know some of their key priorities and why the job's available. Then you want to go back and say, do I have my best stories in my core and categorical form? Do I have the best impact stories? And that's, you're always going back, testing and refining to be better. Now, remember, this is not about you. Okay? Please don't disabuse yourself of the notion that you're important because they've been recruiting you and your ego feels really nurtured. Well, big deal. You're no rock star. You're just a leader who is the potential solution for an employer's challenges and opportunities. Stay within yourself. Stay with who your mom and dad raised. Don't go in there and kind of be egotistical. It's real easy when first time you ever get called by a recruiter. God, it's just a surge, man. It's like, rocket fuel flooding through your veins because somebody knew you. Somebody was impressed with you enough that they called you. Well, they're calling a lot of people. So just keep your wits about yourself and keep your ego in check. Now, the first session, we weren't able to really get into this because of time constraints. But in every interview, there are things that you want to accomplish. Okay, this is your agenda. You don't share this with anybody else. First of all, you want to provide some focused answers and emphasize your success. That's what you're doing when they ask the questions of you about your background. And while you're doing this, you want to build trust and likability with the recruiter, okay, or the hiring manager, whoever's doing this initial screen. Now, you want to be able to ask 2 or 3 questions that provide insight for future interviews and write these things down. Any other questions that you get during that interview, write them down as quickly as possible. Now, don't do it while they're looking. If it's on video, be careful about looking down and writing because they're going to think you're not interested. So, but make notes. You may have to wait till it's over with and then tell everybody to leave you alone and write down as many of the questions as you can remember. Why? Because you're going to build a file. And as you go forward, you're going to hear some of these questions over and over and over again. So that's important why you collect information, why you write down questions. In the in-depth interview, you really want to focus on connecting your VBS strengths to the employer's needs. This is really important, and most people don't do this. This is a differentiating opportunity. If you why worry about being as like everybody else? You're going to get the job because you are not like everybody else. You're going to get the job because you showed them how your experience and your success would help them solve X, Y, and Z issues. When you're in this role, again, ask 2 or 3 questions or as many as they'll allow you to ask that will help you establish insight for future interviews. Plus, and you also want to, while you're doing that, say, is there any change to the timeline? I understand you wanted to finish the search by this date. I just wanted to keep informed so that I don't get put into a box someplace that might create additional problems if you offered me the job and I accepted it. Finally, the face-to-face interview. Again, you really want to work on your reinforce your experience and keep talking about your successes. Okay, you want to ask questions that provide insight for future interviews. They may have 2 final interviews. They may have 2 in-depth interviews and 1 final interview, but you're always looking for more information, more insight to help you sell yourself to that employer. Again, focus on building trust and likability. And then tell them, I want this job. People, I can't tell you, thousands people I've interviewed would just say, well, thank you very much. Well, thank you. I'm interested. And then it was almost like an afterthought line thrown on the floor. Say it this way. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this. And please know that I'm really, really interested in this job. And then if you have more back for conversation, I've had in 27 years, I've never had somebody tell me, John, you tell your client they can trust me to get this done. Tell the client that. Well, people don't like to do that because they don't want to be held accountable. Well, if you want to run with the big dogs, you got to get off the porch. Okay. So you want this job, be willing to make some commitments to get that job. Okay, we jumped over one. And again, never forget you're not the rock star just because some recruiter came calling you. Stay within yourself. You are the answer to their problems and opportunities. Believe that, but you have to convince them of that. And that's, I think, really essential. I want to thank you all for joining us. It's been a really rugged day. I apologize for that. Pretty fatigued with all the things that are going on, and there's a lot going on. I want to tell you a little bit more about our membership program, because this has helped. Tomorrow afternoon, we're doing office hours. And office hours, it's going to talk about what are we talking about tomorrow? Anyway, we've got a great program tomorrow afternoon. I've just gone blank on it. But this one is now members only. And it's our flagship program. And so tomorrow afternoon at 4:00, if you'd like to participate in this, email me and I'll admit you to the private room. If you want to come in and see what we're doing in office hours. It's similar to this, okay? But if you want this kind of information, every week we're going to spend an hour coaching on some issue. And so we do it twice a week. Now, this Thursday, we're adding a new stream that's open to the public. It's called Career Live. It's on Instagram at noon on Thursday. Instagram, Career Live at noon on Thursday. Now, if you become a member, you get 40% off of all your coaching purchases, all your coaching. If you decide I want to take the interview course, I want to take the master class, it's $1,425. You get 40% off. If you want me to look over your resume, well, if I'm just looking it over, it's $179. You get 40% off. If you want to redo your resume and you want me to be actively involved in putting it together for you, it's $550 or $450. You get 40% off. I think you kind of get the drift. So that's one of the benefits. 40% off of all projects and one-on-one coaching. The next thing is that you get 4 30-minute check-in calls each month. So if you're involved in a search, you can actually get a lot of coaching without having to pay any more money except the $79 a month. So that's a real benefit. We have a newsletter that we put out every morning, weekday morning at 6:30 a.m. And it's basically a career advancement newsletter. We talk about other issues that that can relate to the job market, but that's kind of where we focus about how-to stuff and what's affecting the job market. So that's called your career community report, and it's delivered in your email at 6:30 a.m. Central Time. If you want to just subscribe to the newsletter, you can go to Substack, and it's $7 a month. Okay, let's see. All of this that you're getting is available for $79 a month. Okay, so you get the 2 hours of coaching a week. You get access to 4 30-minute calls every month, and you get the 40% discount and the live coaching. So all of that is available for $79 a month, unless you buy something else, unless you want to take a special class or add some additional weight to your training. That's all you have to pay. And we're happy to be here for you. And we hope that you'll come back and see us next Tuesday when hopefully we will be finished by 1 o'clock and not 4:55. So I've been up since, dark 30 this morning. And so I'm just, zapped. So I apologize for that, but I'm glad you joined us today. Again, take a view of our membership page on johngself.com. There's a little ribbon on the right side of the home page, and you can click it, and it'll connect you to that page and the checkout page. Okay, so it's all you have to pay is 1 month, $79. You put your credit card information in, and it automatically draws month to month. There's no contract, and if you say, hey, this is not what I want it to be, you can stop at any time. Okay, finally, let's see what else. There's one more thing I wanted to share with you. Gosh. Anyway, Lunch and Learn is next Tuesday at noon. Office hours tomorrow afternoon at 4. Guiding Your Career Live, Career Live is at noon Thursday on Instagram. And we're also, our newsletter is on Substack, and there's part of that newsletter you can get for free, but that's on Substack. And we also do periodic live streams over there. Thank you all for watching us today. We appreciate your time, your patience, and I hope I haven't been too incoherent. Cheers, everyone. See you tomorrow afternoon at 4.